Hello everybody. The behavior change project that I ran was on a 10-year-old boy with with an autism diagnosis. He is currently not in school. He was pulled a couple years back, and if he was in school, he would be in a special education class. His mom had pulled him because there was a lot of academic regression as well as an increase in behaviors that he picked up while he was there from his classmates. So when he came to the clinic back in 2005, so about 5 years ago, he was diagnosed with an autism spectrum disorder using the ADI-R, the ADOS-G, the CARS, and the CBCL-P, and all of which had a pretty firm arrow pointed towards autism. The target behavior that I had tried to decrease was his property mishandling behavior because it led to an increase in property destruction both at home and at therapy. The definition that I had used was anytime the participant or the client inappropriately used an object. Inappropriate use is anytime that the participant or the client throws an object with force at a wall, person, or at the floor, drops an object from the table by pushing it to the end until it falls, drops it from his hands onto the floor, breaks an object, or rips an object. Measurement was collected using frequency. The behaviors have a pretty solid start and finish to them, so it was the easiest, most efficient way to keep track of his behaviors throughout a session. The session data was only collected during the first hour, and the therapist that was with him, because we switch in and out a lot, could have used either a pencil and paper frequency count or I like to use a clicker because it takes a lot of it doesn't take as much attention off of the client as if you were using a pencil to paper technique. The design that was used for the behavior change project was an ABAB design because it shows us whether or not there was any relationship between intervention and the frequency of behaviors. Baseline was collected during a regular therapy session for him, where the therapist was to react as they normally would to the behavior. The environment was a small, sterile environment, clear of any distractions, and the client had to request a toy to be open, or a toy to come out of the closet using an ASL sign or using his words. He has a room like that, and we created that room for him because of his property mishandling behaviors, and it's been a lot easier for him because there's a lot less distractions out for him. For the treatment, his behaviors were attempted to be reduced by using overcorrection, and for every time he was to throw an item, rip an item, or tear an item, drop it off the table, however he felt like doing that day, he was to overcorrect himself 5 times. So if he were to throw an object across the room, he would have to walk over and pick it up, bring it back to the therapist, and either be physically guided, gesturally prompted, or told to go back to where the item was and pick it up and bring it back 5 times. It was a little harder when he tore an item or ripped an item just because it's hard to tape or staple something 5 times, but it was done to try to combat the behavior. Inter-observer agreement was collected for 32 out of 40 of the sessions with an average of 80% baseline and 87.5% for the intervention, which is above the 80% that you need for a solid inter-observer agreement. The data shows that there is no correlation between intervention and baseline. You can see at the very beginning over here that his behaviors were pretty high for baseline. They stayed very high for intervention, stayed where they were for our back to baseline, and stayed pretty high for the second intervention round that we had. Because there was no correlation or decrease in behaviors between intervention and baseline, there was no generalization used. because it's hard, or you shouldn't generalize something that isn't practical for him. The overcorrection procedures, unfortunately, did not work because of the potential that the function of his behavior was escape or for attention, both of which he received during overcorrection. So if he were to throw an item, we would stop what we were doing, which gives him escape of the task, and then have to go pick it up. He normally would fight us for it, so we would have to physically guide him to comply and come back to the table, which gave him a lot of attention. I had discussed this with our professor beforehand and decided to go ahead and try to see what would happen. I'm doing an FBA and a second course on the same behavior, and it is attention. So it's something that could have been known at the beginning of the semester and would have changed my intervention. So I hope that in the future we're able to properly change his behaviors using an intervention more suited for him. Thank you.